All right, welcome everybody to the SQD Data Talks. Today I'm here with Jasper from Seda and Dimitri from SQD, and we'll be chatting a little bit about, well, data, of course, and how you can move data that isn't already on-chain there and vice versa. And yeah, I think maybe the best thing to do is start with a round of introductions. And since you're the guest here, Jasper, maybe you want to kick it off and tell us who you are and what Seda is all about.
Sure thing. So I'm Jasper. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Seda. At Seda, we are building Oracle infrastructure. And sort of like what makes us unique is that we allow people to write their own data feeds and access that data then from any chain. So one of the ways we've put it is we are essentially trying to bring the internet on chain, right? Sort of like accessing sort of like the entire suite of APIs that would be available if you're trying to build a Web2 app. We want to also make available to Web3 developers. Yeah, I think that's it basically.
All right, great.
Yeah, thanks, Jasper. I'm really excited for the today's session. So I'm Dimitri. I'm a technical co-founder at SQD, aka SubSquid, and also founder of SQD Degen, the Degen Squid. So at SQD, we are building the first database network. In particular, it powers indexing and query over the historical on-chain data for most of the EVM chains, Solana, Fuel, and Starknet. And at SQD Degen, we leverage SQD data to democratize retail trading with AI Copilot. So essentially democratizing on-chain alpha for and making Degens unwrecked. So really excited for the today talk because I think we already had probably two X spaces with Seda, and really interesting what like happens since then. I saw really lots of progress on your side, and I think we probably need to start with a very, I would say, brief crash course about the landscape and the data, right? So what is like a storage protocols, like what is DA, data availability, what is oracles, and also indexing and query engines like SQD. So yeah, let's then kick it from there.
I think that makes sense. I think oracles are essentially making data available to smart contracts, right? But it's not doing data availability. So like I do think these terms do get convoluted. And remember, especially in the beginning when Celestia just came out, a lot of people came to us and were like, oh, we're so bullish on you guys because you're doing DA. And we're like, not exactly. But I think that what SubSquid's doing, or SQD, is actually closer to data availability, but still has different properties. How would you describe the difference between sort of like the indexing side of things versus like the DA layers?
Yeah, I think I tend to think about it in terms of different dimensions of like how you actually access the data and how you use the data, right? So when it comes to like where and how you use the data, then we have two major use cases. One is the oracles, is like where you access the data on chain. So essentially you have a smart contract and for example, you have some automated AI agent or automated index fund, and it has to make the decisions based on the current price or like some external input or like maybe some external data. And like blockchains need this external information to be fed somehow because they're like by design like closed systems, and oracles exactly do like that, right? So for example, if you want to buy Ethereum on smart contract, based on the current Bitcoin price, someone has to like tell you what is the most recent Bitcoin price reading. This is like the most like basic experience. But then we've built like a whole DeFi things, and I believe there are like many more use cases which are not even related to finance. So this is like how I would differentiate the way that the data access. And then when it comes to data availability, I believe that by and large, that was essentially a kind of technical part in how blockchains operate in terms of like how they reach consensus, and you need to make sure that you can like retrieve a certain amount of information at a specific time, and basically guarantee that you can like download it fast. And this in particular has very big implications with like how fast you can reach consensus. And then there is like a separate dimension on like what data you actually use, right? And then there is like on-chain data, but then on-chain data is so basically like what you can retrieve from a blockchain node, and then there are different kinds of purification of this. So you can take raw data, you can have some kind of decoding, and then you can have aggregations on top of it. This is all like where we get to the indexing and like different kind of stages. So one can compare it with the way that you get different kind of fuel out of the raw like oil and like byproducts. So you have like raw stages, you have some kind of tools to purify it, and you have to like combine it, maybe like do some kind of plastics. So it's really like more of a like a whole ecosystem. And yeah, I think it's more of a cliche, but yeah, indeed, like in many ways, data is like what makes everything move, similar to how like oil is the key component in our everyday life.
Yeah, I think one of the ways you could also look at it is who's the user of this data, right? And I think you already sort of shined light on this with the Oracle side of things. Is within Oracles, the end user are smart contracts. For DA, the end users are nodes, validators, or maybe, I don't know, sequencers. Mm-hmm. And for sort of like storage protocols, it's sort of like any sort of Web 2 to Web 3 adjacent server, right? So like whether it's AI agents that want to interact with, need on-chain data to interact on, or whether it's a front end that needs to render data, or sort of like anything you can think of sort of like outside of that realm. Would that be accurate, you think?
Yeah, so pretty much I would think that for the users of the like index and like raw data, they're big vertical where it goes into aggregation, so basically like analysis and kind of analytic stuff, and then you can also like do, for example, some forensics, or like can do some analysis. And then there another vertical where you have an application, or for example a UI, where you have like a very, I would say, customized, specialized indexer specifically reflecting the state of your smart contract, or like in general your application. So you need to have essentially like a backend that would be built in like traditional way. So basically like a database and an API on top of it. And then also I think we see kind of a big branch out of it, which I would highlight. It's specifically regarding the trades and financial data, because still, like by and large, it seems to be the most in-demand use case still, basically trading. So everything related to DeFi, and just to be honest, like all the like big acquisitions, like Founded Fund, and also like trading volumes, everything one way or another is related to trading, and then becomes, I think, the most in-demand use case of crypto and blockchains in general, right? So stable coins, DeFi, trading, and I would be interested in like whether you see any kind of signs of genuinely new use cases popping up. I think Polymarket is probably like the first kind of like stepping stone in the right direction, which is kind of like also still on the degen side, but going back, getting closer to the real world. And I guess like oracles are the like key enabler for that kind of direction.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's like a few use cases that I see where oracles play sort of like a key role that are more novel, and where sort of like bringing newer data types on chain are adding sort of like value. I think prediction market's definitely one. However, what you're seeing with sort of like programmable oracles is that you need APIs to call in order to settle markets, and things such as mentioning whether Zelensky was wearing a suit or not is not, there's no API for that, right? So then you need sort of like social consensus, and these are all the messy markets with the huge disputes where there are also prediction markets like limitless exchange that are focused on like 0 days to expiry options, which are just like basically degenerate options that settle within the same day or within the same hour for Bitcoin pricing. And those are very objective, right? You just like get the data from an API, and then they're very settleable to programmable oracles. So the differentiator there is sort of like subjective versus objective data. And yeah, there's like an argument to make that subjective markets will always have people that are unhappy because they disagree with the outcome of the consensus. And yeah, I'm happy to not be in that space from the Oracle side of things. Other use cases we see that are sort of like more novel would be a few categories. The categories I'd say actually are AI, so on-chain agents that are completely controlled by some model, and that model is plugged into the chain through an oracle. So you can program basically instructions that are given from the model to the smart contract that are like provably agentic, which I think is quite cool. Another one is RWAs. So RWAs have like, or real world assets have like a huge long tail of assets that need data to be brought on chain. And for that, having sort of like this more programmable Oracle stack is like extremely valuable. And then we're seeing some other wild stuff with like sports, or somebody put the fear and greed index that you have on chain to also do triggers, right? Like sell a position when like greed is hit, and like buy a position when we hit max fear. These are all like kind of like funny sort of like implementations that you see with oracles as well. Yeah, and then there's like cross-chain stuff, right? So that's where a data lake such as SQD also becomes super valuable. Having sort of like a huge collection of on-chain data with a single source is extremely helpful, and we can build APIs around it quite easily and build your own feeds like quite easily. So for developers, I think the DevX there is strong.
Yeah, absolutely, and we are actually like thinking about bringing even on-chain data to the SQD Data Lake in the future. And then, of course, the question is like, how do you actually reason about this data, and how do you make a reasonable trust model, right? Because essentially, we would open up the SQD Data Lake for external data providers, and then that would be more of a Oracle in itself in the sense, but then it will be like a lot bigger in terms of like the data throughput, and it will be feeding not the smart contract, but like the data lake.
So that's interesting, because then you're usually using essentially decentralized infra to create like the world's biggest data lake, the world's biggest collection of data from a single lake or source, right? Single API. And then Seda serves as sort of like a single entry point into all of the on-chain economy, right? So any sort of on-chain demand that SQD has can be fed through Seda in a permissionless manner. And I think that is like a super, like good symbiosis, let's say. So I think that's quite cool. Like we're both leveraging data and decentralized infra in like completely different ways that complement each other actually quite well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is really just like two sides of the coin, and like one side enables the other, essentially like unlocking the new economy, which can be fully autonomous and on-chain. So I would like to talk a little bit more about, like you touched upon the subjective markets, and like maybe go a little bit more into technical details of like how do we actually reason like about the trust models and the consensus, and like how do you think about it on the Seda side, right? So you essentially like take any external API into like an Oracle feed, right? And obviously you have to make some trade-offs in order for it to work, right? So like how you approach this, like from the first principles.
Yeah, so first principle there is like programmability of security, because not every feed needs the same level of security. Because if you talk about trade-offs, then security and especially security through decentralization is expensive, right? And so if you then agree that not every feed requires the same level of security, because maybe you are just, I don't know, interacting with some social media that you want to bring on chain for some reason, right? Like for this, you don't have the risk of somebody going rogue and stealing your money. Where if you're building a lending market, you want to have extremely high security. So what we do is we have this network we call the overlay network, which is an independent network of nodes that all stake Seda tokens. And when you issue a new request for data, so when you want an update on a certain feed, you reference how many of the overlay nodes you want to have involved with this. And then we have like secret random committees. So we have like a blind committee that does not know who else is in the committee to actually query and compute this data. And then there is this reporting phase in which they do a commit reveal scheme, in which they actually reveal their data. And then you can set sort of like what you define as consensus. Like if maybe less than 50% agrees on the price, or less than 67% agrees on the price, or for some things that are quite objective, if less than 99% of the people agree on the price, you can assume that there's something going on, and then you can discard the outcome and reissue the request. So yeah, the name of the game there is really sort of like programmability and allowing developers to choose the security stack that they feel is needed for their use case. And then obviously we will have sort of like best standards for like the most obvious use cases, right? Such as like lending, etc. We have like some guidelines on what we would suggest that you do.
Mm-hmm. And then for the upstream API, so what kind of requirements you would need? So like, or what kind of assumptions you have to make as a developer?
Yeah, use redundancy. Don't use one API, right? I'm assuming you're talking about the data sources, right?
Yeah, the data sources.
Yeah. So there's actually other thing I want to mention. If it's private data, such like, if SQD would want to provide data to the Seda network, then we would have some entity or node that's the data provider actually sign off on the data as well. So at the end of the sort of funnel, you're able to verify the signature of the data provider or data providers, depending on how many sources you picked, in order to ensure that the data is actually, it doesn't have to be true, but at least it comes from that source. And so as soon as you have removed the ability to tamper with the data from the network, then now the risk is, like you said, like upstream attacks. And I think for that, the best way to circumvent that is by adding redundancy. So don't just use one source. Use many sources, query more than once. So there's like, use 7, pick a median. That is genuinely what we suggest.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess like when it comes to, for example, cross-chain messaging, that essentially becomes even easier because the blockchain data is self-certifying. So that can also work essentially as a cross-chain relayer, right? So does it mean that like you can essentially like build a bridge on terms of it?
Definitely. It's one of the things that we are quite bullish on, is using sort of like completely programmable cross-chain messaging as a bridging protocol, or basically anything, right? Like intent network.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So basically, like one like on-chain data becomes a data source, and then the relayers just like post it.
Yeah. And what's also cool there is that you have, through like how we do the message packaging, you're able to verify Seda data from any chain. So it immediately becomes omni-chain, basically, as long as somebody deploys a smart contract on the destination chain that can parse our proofs. You have sort of like infinite access to infinite EVM chains at launch, but in the future, any EVM that you can think of.
Mm-hmm. And like, do you feel that we are moving towards this like thousands chains, where essentially like even like L2s and L3s, or we're kind of about to stop somewhere in the middle because things like Solana, Monad, and Mega ETH are getting just like so powerful that like we're like getting more into consolidation phase?
I think you have the monolithic community chains. It's chains that have community of builders that are passionate about it, that want to build there. But I do think like big companies want to catch order flow. They want to be as close to the user as they can. And so I think everybody will want to own as much of the stack as they can. And so like, I mean, there's like the Robinhood chain is already announced, right? But there's going to be like every single bank that's going to issue a stable coin is going to do their own chain. They're just going to try to get as much users to go there as possible, try to make it as sticky as possible. And I think we're going to get definitely thousands of chains, with like a few outlier like community chains that need maybe like super strong composability guarantees before we can simulate those with sort of like the intent networks, which are still quite complex to integrate today, right? Like writing cross-chain composable apps, it's just nobody's really doing it. It's still too hard. Where until that reality is there, and even when that reality is there, like I don't, Solana, Monad, they're all going to do well. They're not going to go away. But I do think that the big trend and the future is holding tens of thousands of chains.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel about the challenges where we basically like going into the territory where we have say 200 millisecond blocks, or like even less, like where it just like goes like crazy? Do you think that the existing infrastructure is going to be able to keep up with this, or like we need to like rework lots of stuff?
Yeah, some stuff definitely needs to be reworked. Some of the incumbent oracles still have like 1 hour push intervals, which does not work very well if you want to run a perp stacks on 300 milliseconds, right? Like it's just can't.
Yeah.
And so like a lot of the perps protocols are building their own oracle systems. Yeah, we're talking to a lot of them. There's like I think you're going to have to hit some sort of speed, like 300 milliseconds or like less than that. Like at some point, you're not going to be able to run it from decentralized solutions anymore necessarily. And so either you have to do some sort of hybrid solution where maybe you have a centralized oracle running in a TE, for example, like to have just max security that does soft liquidations on positions, and then have all the soft liquidations batched. So these are positions that cannot be closed for a while, and like because they're like suspicious, and then have a hard oracle actually perform the liquidation if the price is confirmed every, I don't know, 10 seconds or 15 seconds or a minute, or, you know, hopefully not every hour. I think that, yeah, so I think people have to start building sort of like hybrid systems to keep up with the fast block times, because the more robust decentralized systems are just not going to be able to fulfill those needs. But you still need those properties.
Mm-hmm. So this is basically the path that Hyperliquid is going, right? So they're
slow blocks versus fast blocks.
Well, also this like kind of hybrid approach where it kind of decentralized, but all the validators are like in Tokyo, right, or something like this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that is not exactly what I meant, but it is a good example. But I would actually point towards the EVM being like slow blocks, and then the exchange itself having fast blocks, right? There's like a huge difference in block times of those two. Like there's like they both run in parallel. It's like not a parallelized EVM, but it is kind of like two chains running in parallel that like almost like a commit tree, like sort of like match every now and then, or merge. And yeah, I think those are the types of systems we have to work towards, and we are seeing it. Like people are getting quite creative on that front.
Mm-hmm. So like when it comes to like this spectrum of like centralized and like decentralized systems or like some parts of the stack, which properties do you think are essential and which ones can be like traded off for, like for example speed and latency?
Yeah. I mean, you can trade off security if you have a way to anchor it or backlog it. And I think the one of the first ones that goes out the door is actually censorship resistance. That you're seeing a lot. Like essentially you're giving a centralized entity veto rights on certain things, and then have like a decentralized entity co-sign on the centralized entity. Yeah, essentially like multi-sigs between like centralized and decentralized entities, where you need like a 2 out of 2, but the first signature already triggers some actions, and then the second signature just finalizes the actions, but it can be on a delay. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sure there's a really good answer to that question on what could you trade off? Like what are the first things to go? And I do think censorship resistance historically has been the first one that people like throw out the door, which is a bit scary. But as long as you create systems that still have exit hatches, so that if you enter the system and you get censored, that you at least have the ability to rage quit. I think that is then the trade-off, right? The trade-off is, hey, I give up my censorship resistance, but I don't have the guaranteed right to be able to interact with your protocol. But at least I will always be able to exit with my stake without you being able to censor that. That is what I'm seeing in some of the like cross-chain intense networks, like one balance. And I think that is a trend we'll see more and more often. It's the same with the L2s actually. L2 is basically like, hey, I don't want, you can censor me. You can order my transactions in any way you feel like it. But if I want to leave, I can leave. I just have to wait a week.
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't quite think about that in respect, but I also thought that actually an open system, which may to some extent not be censorship resistant, can still benefit a lot from this like open design space. So I think one of the biggest boosters for the Ethereum growth in the first place was the permissionless nature, not in the sense that everyone could send transactions, which is like, of course, true, but also because the smart contracts and the smart contract code was open and things were composable simply because you could just deploy and reuse it without, for example, setting up specific permissions or like signing up to a specific service, right? And this just spurs the innovation and like make things a lot more like flexible. And maybe even if things are kind of censored, but like not on a huge scale, as long as you can deploy and change stuff without like any ad hoc permission, that can actually like make this ecosystem grow like pretty quickly. So I see blockchains to be very resilient in that respect, simply because anything that is deployed there is globally available, so you can, for example, use it like even from I don't know, like censored countries, or like from even like from North Korea or like whatever. But of course, there are like different agencies, and maybe like if you do like alchemy nodes, you're going to be censored. But like in principle, you can deploy stuff.
For sure. I think I fully agree with that. I think why Ethereum was successful is because of the permissionless composability that it created, right? Like that's what attracted me so much to it in the beginning. It's sort of like the network effect of builders it creates when you can permissionlessly build on top of what already has been built. It's pretty crazy. And then I think what you're seeing with the rollups and sort of like the more corporate rollups that are going to be built is people are seeing the power of this. They want the benefits of it. But then large corporations will always want to create a moat of some sorts. And they do this through building less permissionless systems that are harder to access, harder to leave, and harder to build on, right? So yeah, the old gatekeepers are trying to throw some gates up again, but I still believe that in the end it will be like a net positive. It will be like better than it was before, like incumbent systems, like at least more efficient. And we'll always have the optionality to leave back to these like fully decentralized systems if we want to.
Yeah, right. And do you see similar dynamics in the data space as well? So I guess like one of the things that you mentioned at Seda, that you're like doubling down at composability, right? And like essentially like bringing a lot more power to the developers.
Yeah. What Ethereum did for smart contract devs, we want to do for people that need data on smart contract devs. That's one of the things I said early on. It's like programmable, permissionlessly accessible oracles to me is sort of like the level of innovation that, and this might sound cocky, but the level of innovation that Ethereum had to smart contracts. Because there's still a group of incumbent oracles that decide what data becomes accessible on chain, and they're very expensive. If you wanna get something new added, they're very slow and they're very expensive, like hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars a year. We don't see that future as like slightly interesting or sustainable. So we wanted to offer a different solution that allows people to actually build their own data feeds and access data. And I think that by definition can then spark a new sort of like network effect of builders that will hopefully have like a super positive spiraling impact on the space.
And like, do you think that that's gonna be powered by like AI hypes, or like or will be like a completely different use case, or like maybe just like a spin-off of the existing ideas?
Yeah, I think it will start off as a spin-off of existing ideas, right? Like, hey, imagine lending protocols that can just permissionlessly access any price feed, and think of sort of like the use cases that enables, right? It gets pretty wild. Like we're talking to some teams that are doing some pretty wild stuff on like long tail assets, and whether they will all be successful, I don't know. But at least we're back to like a level of experimentation that hasn't been possible in a long time, because a lot of the things that were possible have already been done, right? And so I think that we are sort of like entering the next phase of possibilities, just because we are literally entering billions of entry points of entropy into the blockchain, which weren't possible before, right? Blockchains were completely deterministic. Any data that's there is put there, and we are sort of like saying like, hey, but what about if we just like allow you to access any data, any data point from anywhere, and then just see what happens, see what sticks to the wall. And I think that is super interesting. So it will probably start off looking like a lot of things you've seen before that are just slightly more exotic, but hopefully in the future we will see some really wild things that have been absolutely not possible before. And whether that's AI, social, I don't know, like hyper financialization, I'm not sure. But I do know that from the AI side of things, we did a hackathon with Encode Club, and there have been a lot of submissions that are AI based, right? People using, I don't know, ChatGPT, or like some mix of like building NFTs through prompts that are issued from a smart contract. So it's just funny experiments where people creating prompt marketplaces through like building like an NFT marketplace that's essentially a prompt marketplace that you can call prompts, pay a little royalty to the creator. Yeah, so this funny new things as well. I love to see those. Those make me the happiest.
Obviously, and actually, there is a funny twist here. Is that at the same time we see a huge influx of, say, institutions, like in general data, into the blockchain, and we even have this like maxima that in 5 years, 80% of the most valuable data in general will be available on chain, in a sense that it can be like a closed loop here. So even if you just like focus on indexing on-chain data and just like extracting data from there, simply because there will be so many use cases and everything like moves on-chain anyway, you will be able, for example, read off completely unrelated data simply by indexing blockchain, simply because there will be like lots of oracles, and you will be able to read off these smart contract submissions, and essentially you will have the data that right now can only be obtained through, for example, a weather channel or like some API, but now it will be stated and like posted by someone to on-chain, and then you can, and in particular, you can even now check Robinhood stocks on Solana and on Arbitrum, and basically like have stocks prices simply by indexing on-chain data. So probably it will be like more and more extensive in that way, and basically it will be like self-fulfilling.
Yeah, the blockchains become the data lake, and now you just have to aggregate it, right? It's sort of like the blockchains become like the data dump or data source for every piece of data, and that you just need then you need a data lake to like aggregate it into like a single source. It's I like that thesis. It's bold.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why we are like super bullish on the idea, is that this like composability translates directly into data composability, because like these blockchains have this attestation and like history essentially baked in the consensus layer, and as long as you can keep up with the latency and keep up with the history and like the sheer volume of this, you'll be able to like model a global universal data catalog, something that just like lives there in an open, similar to how anyone can just like look at a smart contract in the blockchain. We're like super like bullish on this like globalization and opening up the access to the data, basically like for all the applications. And of course, like this little like a second order effect with the oracles as well. And like getting back to the like AI, do you think that right now it's like more of a like hype driven, or like anything specific that you're excited in the sense that it brings genuinely new use cases in the like AI X crypto space?
So I'll give this a metaphor. To me, the question is AI more like ICOs, which were like huge hype, but actually left a super long lasting footprint on the world? Or is it more like NFTs, which were just hype? And to be honest, the real use cases with NFTs have been quite minimal, right? I think AI is much more like ICOs than it is the NFTs, right? So like huge hype in the beginning, lots of fluff, lots of scams. But I think the lasting. Oh, are you talking about AI in crypto or AI in general?
I would say AI in crypto, because like in general.
Okay, yeah. No, in general, obviously, this is not even a discussion. But in crypto, I'm sure that there is going to be projects that are going to also leave a very lasting impact in the crypto space. I think most low-hanging fruit to me is the way you interact with blockchains is just going to be completely AI driven over the next few years, right? Like talking to an RPC or like even a wallet will probably be less necessary, at least in the form factor as we know them today. I think that most on-chain interaction will probably be agents in the next 3 years. And then the only people that are going to be interacting with on-chain themselves are probably people like Mev guys that are trying to be smarter than the AI algorithms, or I know some devs deploying contracts, but even that you can probably easier do through some sort of agent in the future. So yeah, I'm bearish human blockchain interaction, very bullish agent blockchain interaction. The real like decentralized AI stuff, nobody's been able to pill me on it yet, but I know some really smart people that are working on it. So I don't think it's fluff. It's just I haven't found the alpha there, or I haven't dived deep enough to really explore that too much.
Yeah, I'm totally on the same page in the sense that I think there were a lot of experimentation, borderline slops, where people just put something just in a few days and they call it an AI breakthrough. Meanwhile, I definitely think that, as you said, interaction and in general kind of UI part is one of the strongest use cases in an AI X crypto, and the simplest on the starting point is basically an AI agent which translates your human requests into something that it can do on chain, and thinking in the future. We, for example, at SQD think about building personalized experience based on user intents and specifically applying it to the trader. So basically, you have your AI copilot, which represents your risk profile, like your intention, basically your general level overview. Meanwhile, it has access to all the data power, all the information, and actually learns from your habits. And then it can trade 24/7 for you. Meanwhile, kind of representing all your typical behaviors. So basically, it's like a real reincarnation as a trader, which actually mimics your patterns, which at the same time prevents you from doing something really stupid. And,
I would just turn it off. If I get a trading me that just trades all day, I turn it off immediately, please. I'm going to lose so much money.
Yeah, well, this thing presumably will be more of a autopilot that will prevent you from getting wrecked, simply because it will have a lot more information.
It will know your tendencies and know where you go wrong, and not do that, of course.
Drive away the stupid decisions, rely on the hard data, meanwhile follow the preferences that you have. So this is I think one of the directions that I personally feel very excited about.
Yeah, I also thought that one of the things I liked about the Oracle-driven on-chain agents was that you can sort of verify what the agent uses, right? So because right now, like you said, right, what people essentially did is they build a wrapper around Twitter API and a chat GTP API key, put it on a server, and people called it decentralized AI or decentralized agents, even though it was just a private key writing to the chat. It's kind of dumb. Where if you have a smart contract that has a list of sources that it queries for input, and you can see it actually firing the request and then getting instructions back on what to do and acting on it, I think you'll just get these super cool representations of AI behavior that are provably AI, that are not just a guy being oh wait, let me just do this myself. I think that's a fun one. Also, especially when we eventually onboard the Twitter API and you can tweet from smart contracts as well. I think it will be quite cool.
Yeah, that's super cool actually, because that opens up so much so much space and so much like design space to essentially automate stuff without like also relying on the infrastructure that normally not just centralized, but it just like simply can break like under the load. Yeah, that's actually super cool. I would like to try making smart contract calls to make Twitter. So we are coming to our time limit. So maybe you can also continue and like wrap up like what would be the most interesting stuff to follow in the next 3 months, and like in general in crypto, and also on the Seda side. So you guys like have big releases recently. So like what to expect?
Yeah. So we just released mainnet. You're now able to write your own data feeds and access them from any chain. However, it's still a bit of a pain to actually read the data on every chain. And so we are doing like a rollout of chains where we make it easier by deploying dev tooling for actually access to the Seda network. The first one was Base. We announced it a few days ago. Very exciting. So yeah, we're partnering with Base. We're giving out huge gas grants to people building on Base so that they don't have to pay Seda gas for the first year or years. So yeah, keep your eye out for more chain launches and the first applications going live that are actually integrated with Seda. Yeah, that's it. So chain integrations and application integrations, that's what we're looking for. What's on you guys' list?
Yeah, so first of all, like we have right now multiple like facets. So we have SQD network as a fundamental base layer, and we are released a separate Solana Soldexer brand specifically for Solana developers and Solana data. We are open up portals for like direct SQD access for all the EVMs chains, and this is a key infrastructure that enables, in particular, what we have at SQD Degen for like trading stuff, and we have strategies that are running on the EVM side, also signals that show Solana trades. So essentially, right now, it's like more of an ecosystem where a release at the SQD network side enables like downstream applications. Also, we have a lot of big news coming from our institutional brand, Ocean Stream, where we provide institutional grade data for big quant funds. Currently, it's under NDA, but I think that we will be able to come out with a pretty big news somewhere in September. And yeah, of course, it's all powered by the tooling and the data provided by SQD Data Network.
Very exciting. Sounds awesome.
All right. So
yeah, thanks the two of you for sharing all of those insights, and thanks to everybody listening. And yeah, definitely go check out what Seda is doing, and if they are building, look into the gas grants on Base, right? That's apparently the hot new alpha. And yeah, SQD, we are also cooking a lot of things, so stay tuned for that. And if you have any further questions or any, well, data people you'd like to see featured on here, don't hesitate and let us know. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for joining us, Jasper and Dimitri, and we'll see you around again soon.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me. Great conversation. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.